Good morning, West Ham fans. Ruben is the one for me. So everybody, Russ on the Western Network. Hope you're safe. I hope your weekend's going so well as well. No West Ham to actually ruin it this weekend, so enjoy. Because there's gonna be plenty of games coming after next weekend onwards. So if you're new, give it a like, comment, share, all that type of stuff. So obviously the David Moyes saga, contract saga is still ongoing, and there's. I mean, it's safe to say there will be a new manager West Ham at some point. There's nothing controversial to say that at all. But, and I think I did a video about 2 months ago, maybe, looking at some of the runners and riders in terms of the the managerial jobs, particularly for West Ham. And the international break is going to be some time to look at stuff and assess and come up with some thoughts. And I think for me, it's not Xabi Alonso is my ideal choice. It's not Will Still, friend of the channel. For me, the person I really want is this guy, Ruben Amorim, the Sporting Lisbon manager. And he's had a fascinating career, and he's got a fantastic record at the moment in terms of his stats. I mean, this is something I did before when I did all of them. But in terms of Amorim, he's 38, so he's a very young manager. 188 games managed. He's won the Portuguese league. We'll talk about that in a bit. 3 Portuguese Cups and the Super Cup in Portugal. He's got a win ratio of 69%. We'll talk about the clubs because it's quite an interesting story. Only plays a 3-4-3 formation. Now, in terms of him I mean, he was a player for Benfica, a relatively solid squad player. Would always put a shift in when he played. Not spectacular, but would always be very reliable. He was a full Portuguese international. Had many caps of Portugal, but he retired. He retired at the age of 32 due to injury. And then decided to go straight into coaching and start doing his badges. He then got an offer from the 3rd division side, Casapia. What a great name. Casapia. There it is. To take over. Unfortunately, his time there wasn't great, to be honest. Basically, he was suspended for a year and the club fined 6 points due to him not having the proper accreditation or coaching badges in order to manage the club at that level. And as a result, he resigned shortly after the initial hearing, although subsequently that was then dropped and his suspension was then, he was unsuspended. But regardless of that, he left. He thought, it was a man of principle. He's like, I'm going, clearly I haven't got the right badges yet, type of thing. So not great, but there's little parallels to how Will Still is. They play, his coaching badges and stuff like that. But anyway, he then almost immediately was then approached by Benfica, his side that he worked with, or he played for many years, and was offered the under-23 coach or under-23 manager's role, which he actually turned down in favour of Sporting Braga for a similar role, albeit it's the reserves rather than the under-23s. So he became the reserve team manager for Sporting Braga. That was a short-lived appointment, not for his fault this time, but the Braga first team manager, what was his name? I've got it here. First team manager Ricardo Sapinto was basically sacked, and so Amorim was basically put in as a short-term gap, so to speak, for the rest of the season. So now he was manager, literally a year after leaving 3rd division side Casapia. Was it Casapia? He was then the Sporting Braga head coach. And to say that period went well was a bit of an understatement, in all honesty. He Well, his first game was they won 7-1, and he didn't drop any points until February. He also, beats Benfica, I think, away from home for the first time domestically in 65 years. In fact, he didn't lose a game domestically for the rest of the season. He only lost a couple of games, which was in the Europa League. And obviously, because of such a fantastic sort of time, it's unsurprising that he was thrusted into the limelight, and the vultures were starting to circle around in terms of who he could go to next. And the next position was actually at Lisbon, at Sporting Lisbon, who themselves were really in the doldrums, to be honest. This was a period where Bruno Fernandes had just left, and Bruno Fernandes had done basically carried Lisbon on his shoulders for several years now in terms of goals, assists, and stuff like that. The current manager, I think Salisa was the manager, basically couldn't just come to terms with it. He couldn't do it. And so Sporting Lisbon stumped up 10 million euros, which was the release clause from his Braga deal, which made Ruben the third most expensive manager of all time. I wouldn't have a clue what his release clause is now. I reckon, 2-3 times that at least, to be honest. And so he joined like midway through the season. It wasn't great. It was okay, average. Sporting Lisbon were in the doldrums, really, as I said. They weren't. Benfica and Porto were streets ahead of them that season, and they were for a while, to be honest. But the following season, they came back with a vengeance. They hadn't won the league since the early 2000s, and basically he ended up winning the league for the first time, which was phenomenal. And they didn't look back. They didn't look back. And what was quite interesting was also, not only were they improving in the first team squad, but the academy as well. They hadn't had a good academy product through for a long time. Considering they had the likes of, like Cristiano Ronaldo, they had the likes of Bruno Fernandes. They had one of the best academies in the world, in Europe, But the taps had dried up in terms of developing them into the first team squad. And also, Benfica and Porto were like streets ahead. But, by winning the title and also winning the League Cup that year as well, it put Lisbon back into the frame. And since then, they've been absolutely phenomenal. They're currently second in the Liga Portugal, on the same points with Benfica at the moment, but a couple of, but on goal difference, basically. What he did was he changed it all. In terms of what he brought in, he spearheaded it with João Paulinho, who we know obviously from his days at Fulham. Have I got a picture of João? Just to make it. João Paulinho, who he worked with him at Braga, actually, so that's why he knew of him, and where he was on loan. And basically, he made him a bully, midfield bully. And I could see him doing the same thing with Edson Alvarez. Do you know what I mean? There's a very similar sort of pathway there. He also had he needed a new talisman. Obviously, with Bruno Fernandes, he got Pedro Gonzalez, who sort of left that role and started to bleed through players from the academy into the side. Seems familiar, but also sell players for a profit as well. So, he brought in the likes, or he sold the likes of, what was the midfield? Was it Ugarte? They sold him to PSG for 60-odd million quid. Pedro Porro went to Spurs, and he brought in younger players and also players who, needed a leg up, so to speak. So, we've been scouting several of their players already this season. We know they're watching the Benfica versus Lisbon game, which Benfica won 2-1 in Benfica. But the likes of Gonzalez Iheanacho, that sort of mid central defender, that he's key to the Sporting Lisbon side at the moment. And we were looking at him. He's a fantastic, probably one of the best young central defenders in Europe. The likes of Marcus Edwards, the winger. So we've been looking at a number of their players as well as Benfica's, but particularly Sporting Lisbon. So you can see how there's a lot of nice little parallels there. What I like about him is he changes things. He is a very progressive manager. He plays a 3-4-3, but that's not. But it could be a flat one, a flat 3-4-3. It could be a diamond. It could be a double pivot. He could put in make it a 3-4-2-1 as well. He changes. He can change the game around, which makes things really interesting and really hard to scout, really, for an opposition. He basically loves to pack in that midfield, clog it up, really. I mean, his sides don't score loads and loads of goals. I mean, last year he scored considerably less goals than Benfica and Porto, but it's defensively very strong. It's built on a very strong central defense of 3 and a very strong CDM as well. And they are the main sort of they will thrust the team forward, from a very strong defensive. But what they do is they do a really high press. And we showed against Arsenal, if we do a high press, we're really good. And so that's what his sides are based on, a high press. In fact, I think Sporting Lisbon played Arsenal, was it last year in the Europa League? They gave him a torrid time, on the high press. And that's what his sides do. They pad in that midfield. So they have to play the ball out wide to sort of isolated wingers and fullbacks. And because it's not just because, and it's not Moyes ball 1.0. Their attack is always dynamic. It's always on the counter attack. They love a set piece goal. I mean, when he first joined, Sebastian Cortez, who went to Liverpool, I think he was like their main sort of centre half. Would get in a few goals and be the sort of the linchpin defensively. And I can see someone like Mavropanos taking that role. And so there's lots of parallels. I mean, there's no surprising he's one of the most courted head coaches. I have to keep saying, removing the word manager from my vernacular, because he's a head coach. And he's one of the most courted head coaches in Europe. And you can see why. He's completely turned around Sporting Lisbon to now a regular, where they were the third side, or that they were competing with the third side with the likes of Braga before he joined. Now he's very much, it's them, Porto and Benfica in terms of the 3, and one of them will win the title and the other 2 will bring them very close. And I think it's a really interesting, someone to look at in a bit more detail, which is what we did. And that's the whole point of the international break. You can have a breather and look at things and think about things. So like we did the whole thing with the youth team the other week, looking at the academies and doing some stats and stuff like that. And say for me, I was looking at some of these managers, where is Xabi Alonso? I know everyone, is a real thrust for someone like Xabi Alonso. I think Ruben Amorim is a bit more under the radar, but he's a fucking good coach. Really is a good coach. So what'd be interesting, if we did sell him, how would it look if he came in tomorrow, which you won't do, but if he did, how do we set up with the existing squad? Well, I think he loves the goalkeeper who can play. So, we know that's one of Areola's strong points. We know that's what he's really good at in terms of distribution. If he's going for the 3 at the back, I think something like Aged would be an absolute dream for him. His diagonal crossfield balls are some of the best from a centre half in the Premier League, without a shadow of a doubt. I think someone like Mavropanos would be an absolute dream for him as well, mainly also because of his set pieces as well and the aerial threat he brings. I think you obviously naturally you'd bring Kurt Zouma in the middle, but I think that would be someone you would look at to upgrade and bring in a younger model. I think that's fair enough. I think he would, he likes mobile forward defenders, doesn't necessarily, like blockers. And I think I see Zoomers or something like that. Then we go to the 4. Emerson would absolutely thrive in a Amorim side. Absolutely thrive. On the right-hand side, I think that would be someone we'd need to bring in. I'd probably put in someone like Tio Kira. So I think he's a better wing back than Soufal is. And, someone like Aaron Wan-Bissaka, we were linked to him, I spoke about yesterday. He'd be brilliant. He'd be brilliant in this side. Then you've got your pivot. And your pivot being Edson. He would be the linchpin of this side. He would be the João Paulinho of this side, in terms of but the João Paulinho at Sporting Lisbon rather than the João Paulinho at Fulham, just literally being the bully, and sweeping up all what's around him. And he would be brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And then you need your playmaker. So at the moment, you'd have obviously Paqueta. He would be your playmaker, and he would love the openness that we get. They tend to do a 5 press, 5 defend. So it's like the front 5 tend to really press, and the front 5 sort of the back 5 defend. If that makes sense, that's what these sides tend to do. And then you've got your mid, and then you've got your front 3. Someone like Bowen would love it. Balls over the top, him chasing, absolutely love it. You might put a Kudus in as a centre forward, potentially. And I think you would need to upgrade your left-hand side, bringing in someone like Edwards. I know Edwards tends to be on the right-hand side more, but still, you can move things around. You can make a fluid. Maybe Bowen could go up on his own, and then Edwards on the right, and then Kudus on the left. Maybe. I don't know. But it could work. But anyway, I'm the king of wishful thinking. I just thought it'd be interesting to see how we could line up under a new manager, because there will be a new manager. Moyes is going to be the manager forever. And we know that Tim should have the next one lined up. And, the fact we've been scouting a lot of Portuguese players. We've been scouting Benfica. We've been scouting, Benfica. I've got Roger Schmidt, the 55-year-old, German manager. Interesting. I hope you enjoyed it. Something a bit different. Anyway, if you're new around here, don't forget to like, comment, share. I think we might get a video from Anton. Maybe even one from Holly in terms of who they want, and just some different opinions. But let me know. Obviously on paper, everyone looks fantastic, innit? I think you have to delve a little bit deeper in. Alonso will be a phenomenal new manager. Will still has his qualities as well. Likes to change things up, likes to do things differently. I just think Amorim has a little bit more about him in terms of experience than both of them, and would probably cost a bit less as well. Maybe. I don't know. Not saying it's a be all and end all in terms of how much, but I just think, although, if they spent 10 million quid 4 or 5 years ago on when he was at Braga, he's going to be at least, I don't know when's his contract run out? Let's have a look. His contract expires 2026. So he's going to cost you a bit. But, as I said, he's got three Portuguese cups, 1 Portuguese league, and 1 Super Cup. And I think the age of 38, you could do a lot worse, I think. Anyway, take care. Stay safe. Stay warm. Stay humble. Keep the faith, my friends. And come on, you bloody irons. Enjoy your weekend. Your stress-free West Ham weekend. Bye-bye.